CMU Silicon Valley Distinguished Lecture Series. I am Osman Yan, and we are here for the very first lecture of this academic year. And we are deeply honored to have one of the most influential computer scientists in the world, Professor Donald Knuth. It is personally an honor for me to introduce him to you, although you know a lot about him already, of course. Don Knuth is the Professor Emeritus of the Art of Computer Programming at Stanford University, where he supervised 28 PhD students to date since 1968 when he became a professor there. Don is widely regarded as the father of analysis of algorithms, and he is the author of several classic books, including his masterpiece, 4 volumes of The Art of Computer Programming, 5 volumes of The Computers and Typesetting, and 9 volumes of his collected papers. He is, as most of us know, he is the inventor of 2 beautiful typesetting systems, TeX and Metafont, that are extensively used for book publishing all over the world. Adan, of course, has received numerous honors and awards, and I can only highlight a few of them here. In particular, he is a member of several prestigious institutes and organizations, including the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, the U.S. National Academy of Engineering, and the American Philosophical Society. But most notably, Don has received the ACM Turing Award in 1974. A side note here is that he was only 36 years old at that time. Last but not least, he is a recipient of the National Medal of Science from the President Jimmy Carter in 1979. So without further ado, I would like to leave the stage to him. But of course, we have a different setup today. We will be actually having a Q&A session. Don will be answering your questions, and I will hopefully moderate this hopefully efficiently. And I would like to start with a few questions from the Silicon Valley campus. Then we will go to the Pittsburgh campus, maybe take a few questions there. And then we will also have some questions coming from the online audience. And I would like to start with Tony Westerman to ask the first question.
Good, thanks. Thanks, Alvin. So, in the early days, there was a notion that you invented paying a bounty for bugs that were found in your books. You, for anybody who found a bug in art of computer programming, you check for $1. I'd like to know first what percentage of those were actually cashed, kept as souvenirs, and then how much did the pain of working with that to get those books produced influence you to create TeX and LaTeX?
That was 2 questions. Okay, that's all right. Hi, everybody.
Guilty as charged.
That's okay. Yeah.
I have more.
Oh gosh, I'm stumped. Okay. Okay. So first of all, yeah, I started paying people $1 for every error they found in it, and at first everybody cashed the checks. $1 was worth something, you know, in those days, and there were lots of errors, and I don't know how much it's totaled over the years, but it's probably in $40,000-$50,000. I mean, that's a lot of years, but the way I write books maximizes the chance for making errors. Instead of saying that something is better, you know, I'll say that it's 14.2% better, and then if it's really 14.3% better, that's an error. And I have to confess that when I was a student like you guys, I didn't get 100% on all my exams. Sometimes I got 99, you know, and so if on every page I have about 300 chances to make an error, and I get 99%, that's still lots of errors. Okay, so your question was about people cashing the checks, and this came out of my family checking account for a while, and that got to be a bit of a burden for my wife because some of the checks weren't clearing, and so we opened a new account just for this purpose, and I could get an account that also had a nice, you know, as the years went on, they had checks that looked cuter, and so I could, when they had something to do with books on it, and so on, and I could make a nice. So I also started sending out checks that were fancier that gave people even less reason to cache them because you know they were sort of designed to look good if you put them in if you put them on the wall or you, I upped the ante about the time I started working on tech because it was different for tech. Um, uh, there I was giving checks also for errors in the software. So anybody finds a bug in the software, it was worth $2.56 uh, uh, for the first year. But then after that, if somebody found a bug the next year, it was worth $5.12 and $10.24. So, depending on how old that part of it. I mean, if it was a bug that was just introduced in the most recent version, it was only still worth $2.56. But if it had been around for a long time, it got more and more valuable. So finally, I had to stop doubling, and it peaked at 376. What is it? 327.68. And I've written about 10 checks for that over the years. But it's still what happens if you find a bug in tech. And there were two of them last year that I paid. One to a guy in Russia whose address I haven't. I mean, I've got the check ready for him, but he hasn't claimed it yet. And then another one to the man in Germany who was responsible for what's called TEX. That includes software as well as books. Then, but the sad story is that banks haven't kept their security is pretty lousy, and so starting 10 years ago, maybe a little earlier, I started getting panic messages from my bank saying, "Don, did you authorize this check, this electronic funds transfer for $8,000 from your account?" And I said, "No, I never heard of such a thing." You know, and it turned out that criminals who see the number on a check are able to make themselves ATM cards and withdraw funds from that account. Don't ever show anybody a personal check. If you and people had been by that time, copies of my checks were on Wikipedia, and so anybody anybody anywhere in the world could look it up and figure out what my bank account was. And so anyway, it's a long story, but I had to cancel three bank accounts at different banks, and finally I decided to open my own bank, and it's called the Bank of Sans Serif, and my wife designed a nice logo for the bank, and so I have checks that are only on it, and the payment is in hexadecimal dollars. You can see examples of this on the web, and instead of actually having funds like you have it on deposit. You have bragging rights to it that appears on the web. Like everybody's account is there, but also if people want to withdraw the money, then I'll use PayPal or something to get it to them, not personal checks. And in one case, there was a guy who actually used it to pay. He was the one who found several bugs in text, who used that to pay part of his tuition net, right? It also do pay up. Is that enough of an answer, Tony?
Okay, so who wants to ask the second question? Martin.
So in reflecting on the history of tech, look back at Roth, Scribe, how much do those things influence your design?
There was special influence from Enroth, Troth, which came before tech. Scribe was more contemporary, Uh, so I, uh, I, um, I don't know if people know about it, but in the Unix system they had uh, people at Bell Labs had included ways to do typesetting, and nroff was sort of come out on your terminal, and troff would come out on a special machine that would do something that looked a little bit like books, with 6 fonts or something like that. And the physicists picked this up, and so they started getting experience with it, and the troff project proved that it was actually viable. That I mean, it was sort of a existence theorem that people could do typesetting of physics papers, and their secretaries could learn how to do it, and they could use it in a couple of the journals. I don't remember, Physics Review Letters, something like that. Started using troff for the publication. But I guess Tony asked, yeah, the publishing industry went through a huge revolution about 1970, where they switched over from using metal type, hot lead type, and started using photographic type. That came, actually they used some kind of laser, but anyway, it was not digital. It still went through cameras, but it didn't use lead anymore. Used lenses and optics, and the letter designs were on a big rotating disc, and it would flash at the right time and put the letter in place. And so all of the newspapers and magazines started to go over to this technology, and printers didn't care anything about mathematics because that was, they called it penalty copy. It was hardly anybody paid for it, and it was a big pain. So they didn't. So it became impossible to make decent looking textbooks, math books. Well, you know, as I say, I was making errors in my books, so I had to once in a while come out with new printings and new editions, and they couldn't make the new ones look good like the old ones. The old ones were done with the highest standard. There were a few places, like in Hungary, people still had a few of these old machines where they could do typesetting the old way. But the only thing available to me by 1977, they tried to do mathematics, but the letter K in a subscript would look different from the letter K that's not in the subscript. It was just horrible, well, we had some people said, well, we just have to get more images of more characters for you, and this was illegal, but they knew a place in Poland that would be able to do it for us, but the thing was awful. Well, then I was working at Stanford, and we give exams on a comprehensive exam to our grad students, and I was chair of the committee. We had to look at what books to put on the comp the next year, and we got a preview of Pat Winston's new book on AI, and it was done all digitally. There was a machine that had been invented by Ed Fredkin, a company down in Southern California, and they were able to produce books that all out pixels, all out digital bits that specified the letter forms and everything, and it looked just as good as real books. and so this was a revelation. I was when it was metal, that was something really scary. When it was even optical photography, that's analog. I'm a digital guy. But when I found out that all I needed to get my books looking good was zeros and ones, I thought, oh, I can do zeros and ones. So I have to make a pattern of zeros and ones to say where the ink goes on a page. And so I thought, okay, I'll take a year and do that. And at that time is when is when I started looking at TROF, which had the which, as I say, was an existence theorem that it could be done by people. It looked awful, though. I mean, I wouldn't want my books to look like those books did. Still, I knew that if I only got the zeros and ones right, I'd have a solution to my problem. So I took I planned a sabbatical year. Actually, I was going to go. I made arrangements to live in Chile, and I was going to learn Spanish and so on. It never materialized. I called him up and said, "Sorry, I got to stay. I got to stay here in Silicon Valley, where I have equipment that I can use to digitize the letters and get ready for my system." So I spent the sabbatical working here, and I don't want to go through the whole long story, but and it took more than a year to get the thing to look right, and we started a long process, and I had started a joint program with the art department, so that a lot of the people who became fixtures at Adobe came out of our program, and and at the same time the ideas of PostScript language were being independently done, and also and largely that was coming out of Xerox PARC. And then there was Scribe, as you mentioned, Brian Reed's system, which was a user a structured language for users to express their document. So Scribe had an influence, although I'm not a guy who loves parentheses. In other words, I'm happy to say begin, but I always forget to say end. And so Scribe was based on a nested structure, and my favorite way was more freeform. I disciplined myself, but to that extent it was too much of a pain. But Brian was a Stanford professor, and we got to be good friends, and he had all kinds of great ideas. And then later the things that Scribe had that Tech didn't have were added by Leslie Lamport. Thanks, Martin, for the questions.
Now we will have a couple of questions from online, and Hakan will ask them.
So I'll take them in the same order they arrive. With regard to fonts, how many glyphs are too many?
How many glyphs are too many? Well, it depends on what. Okay, so a glyph is it's the shape of a letter, and there are some alphabets that have many varieties for the same letter, those are. I mean, there's a history of this. In fact, in the 1930s, the Christian Science Church wanted to make the best possible printing of Mary Baker Eddy's work, and they commissioned typographers to work on it, and so they decided to print. I'm not sure what the name of the document is, but they made 200 of them, and you can find them in cases around the world, in which they had 20 different versions of the letter E, for example. And the idea was, a little variety is not boring, and sharp. Actually, these could be too rigid, and so a lot of glyphs for the same letter. Now, if you're doing something like Chinese, Japanese, there of course the basic language has thousands of, and then there are many more that are used only ancient times or in scholarly ways. My Japanese friends can't read Japanese from 18th century because those characters have gone out of style. Um, uh, but scholars can do it. So, but Unicode now has, I don't know how many CJK glyphs, something like 8,000, something like that. And there's swash characters that for fancy effects, and especially I made a font once for my daughter as a Christmas present based on her handwriting, and so I had different things that she would use when she would. Now, there are, when you get into matters of aesthetics, you can find that there's no accounting for taste, and so everything that one typography loves, some other typography will hate, and there are raunch fonts and there are punk fonts. In fact, I have a font called Punk, which was another story, but I use it on party invitations, and it generates a new glyph every time. I mean, you as a random number generator, it comes out different each time, and you can choose the one you like. So that's my quick take on glyphs.
This is a different flavor to it. What is the future of higher education? What will be the impact of massive open online courses, institutions such as Stanford or CMU?
Yeah, that's a great question. Everybody's asking. As we learn new ways to do things, how much does that upset about the old ways? So we had, we had a time when books were almost impossible to get. Now we have videos in everybody's hand. Certainly something is different about this new situation. My own personal feeling is quite mixed. I haven't participated in the MOOCs myself. In fact, I just read an article in the Notices of the American Math Society by people who had researched it, and they had talked to lots of professors who had been authors of MOOCs or had been theorizing about MOOCs and so on, but none of them had actually taken one of the classes. And so these people who wrote the article, spent a year taking 6 of the classes and told about their experiences, and they liked Stanford classes. I was glad to see the ones given by my colleagues, and my colleagues are enthusiastic. They have every day they get 300 emails from Lithuania telling them how wonderful their class is. I mean, this certainly makes them feel happy. And so you can see that it's doing a lot of good. There's also reports like Governor Brown wanted Udacity to solve all the problems of San Jose schools by having the courses online, and it turned out the students also had to work, and there was no royal road to learning it. Just the fact that it was online didn't mean that it was going to be easy. And so they have a big project now going at Georgia Tech. The jury's out on all kinds of things. There's different. My colleagues at Stanford think that one of the key reasons that for the early successes of the courses was the fact that we had students that students working in sync all around the world, and so it was not the videos themselves, it was not the content so much that you get that comes in well thought out 10-minute segments, but the fact that the students were using social networking and studying together, and they were helping each other, and they were all working in sync, and they were all facing the same problems and communicating with each other and self-teaching. That's the best way to learn is when you got somebody that you can discuss something with and get excited about. So they felt that actually the the social networking aspect behind the scenes, which was the game changer in these MOOCs. Now, when you talk about higher education, a lot of people think that education is about getting a credential so that you get a great job. And they don't think of education as a way to learn something and improve your life. You have to know something because it's a job skill, not because it's nice to know. I'm personally on the nice to know side myself. I'm glad that I'm glad I'm educated, and I'm glad that I also was able to get a job. But I didn't go to college in order to get a job. So, and if everybody was only interested in it for learning, then there would be no reason to cheat, for example. So, but I see that a lot of people are cheating, and there's a big soul searching going on in that respect. Education I got was not that much content either. It was what I learned from my classmates about life. I had to learn things like somebody pays for toilet paper. Just being at home, I would never learn that. But in other words, I get a college experience by the friends I make. They stay my friends for life. This experience I don't get by watching something on a computer. But it's clear that computers can bring content in much better forms than we had a chance to do before. The responsibility is, I spent my life writing The Art of Computer Programming. Maybe I should start all over again and make it all in videos and color and so on, but that's impossible. In other words, the bar is too high. I can maintain quality at the level of the textbooks that I had in the 60s, but a single person isn't able to master the new things. So I imagine what's going to happen in the long run is that somebody wants to do a really major text in whatever form it's going to have for a subject like computer programming or physics or whatever. It's going to really be a production like a big Hollywood movie. Where you have hundreds of people collaborating, each of which have highly technical skills, and they do it well. They're going to come out with a fantastic product. Frank, who's the great movie producer of the 30s, Capra, Frank Capra. Yeah, he was a Caltech grad, and he was commissioned by Bell Labs, or was it the government, to make some science, some movies about science, hour long, and there were half a dozen of them, and they showed them at the Stanford Theater last year, and once also 10 years ago, and those are incredibly good. So anyway, I imagine that there's going to be a trend to make productions that where you don't have a course prepared by one teacher, but by a consortium of people who are really into it. A little bit like Sesame Street, you might. Okay, and then that'll be a great supplement, but it's not going to replace the friend building and learn to study and aspects of enhancing creativity that go on. And I haven't said that much about credentials because that's not on my radar screen.
Very good. So let us now go to Pittsburgh and take a couple of questions from there. We don't have a moderator there, but I guess the first person to speak will get to ask the question.
Wow. Tell your friends. You work for Facebook? What, do you work for Facebook? Uh-huh. Anyway, just put a few likes up there for literate programming. No, it's a it's a style of programming that I love so much. I can't speak dispassionately about because it changed my life. The idea that when I was programming, that my program was not something for the computer and the compiler to read, but it was something for my friends to read. And I was writing for them, and I had them. But not only that, it's something for me myself to read a year later. So that I'm sort of in teaching mode. When I'm writing the program, I'm also it's like I'm in front of a class explaining what the program is supposed to do, and not just instructing. It's something that I like so much. I didn't even remember what question you asked about it. Oh yeah, yeah. Right. Okay. So we had over the years there's more and more people get addicted to it, but it's still a, a small percentage of the total. And and uh, I I have two uh, thoughts about it uh, that aren't trivial. One of them comes from John Bentley, who was a person who promoted it in his column in the ACM Communications during the 80s, and we had some really marvelous contributions also by Doug McElroy, others, uh, and the thing is, uh, it might be that it just that people don't enjoy something that they don't have the right skill set for. So let's say that only 2% of the world is good at programming. Okay, now what percentage of the world is good at literature or writing? And so you have to be in the intersection of that in order to really groove with literate programming. Okay, that's now I don't know about that hypothesis. I had one small sample. I had 7 undergrads at Stanford that we worked on a project together, uh, a summer project, and I directed them, and it involved literate programming techniques, something they'd never heard before, and with 6 of them, they loved it, and they continued to use it in their lives. The 7th guy, he just sort of put a literate frame around the thing, so he could program his old way and just say start literate and end literate and everything else was just one big long module. So the idea in literate programming is that your program consists of modules that it's like a hypertext. So each module can incorporate other modules, and it can be used in other modules. And so you make a complicated system by taking a lot of simple parts and putting them together in simple ways. And each of these parts, each of these little modules, you describe both informally and formally. Informally, you use English, math or something, and then you have the formal part, which is in a programming language like C. It's adapted to zillions of programming languages, and so the guy who didn't like it, he just made his whole program into one module. But when you do the other, I mean, it makes things actually really really easy to debug, and it works well with debuggers and so on. So every I think I write about 5 literate programs a week. I mean, some of them are long, some are short. Published lots of them, and a lot of other people have used them in books, but it still hasn't taken over. And so the other thing I'm saying, why isn't it going, is that I think the existing ways of writing software that we see, by the thousands, you read somebody's code, you get the source, and you see it. There's a style that's become lingua franca of coders, and they know how to read it. And the thing is, it's much worse than literate programming, but it isn't so bad that it flops. It's good enough. And so there's not that much momentum to change. It's like maybe Esperanto is the best language, but I'm not going to switch from English to Esperanto because English is working okay for me.
Okay, one more question from Pittsburgh, maybe? Any questions from Pittsburgh? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. In the informal part, you also explain what you shouldn't do at this step, or what you tried and what failed, and that goes into the document and it stays with it, and it yeah, the creation of the program, the initial debugging is only, as you point out, is only one of the phases, but the whole life of the program. If I had another lifetime to do over again, of course I would have an operating system that used only literate programming. I would start a company and employ only programmers who did literate programming, and so on. And I think we would win over the competition quite rapidly.
Right. So let's go back to Silicon Valley. I think we have. Okay. Start with Max.
Okay, so given all these ideas about literate programming, about tech, and going always to higher levels of programming, why did you choose a really low-level mix language for the art of computer programming? What were the trade-offs you considered as part of this decision?
Yeah, thanks. So in the first place, I'm a great believer that the key to being a good computer scientist is to be able to understand all levels and move between levels as rapidly as possible. The people who are good at that seem to correlate very well with the people who are really good at programming and science. So if someone stays at only only low level or at the high level, they aren't really practicing the art of computer programming. So you need to have the whole picture and not just one part of it. All scientists can fall into a trap where they learn their science by using low-level concepts, and chemists maybe blew up a few things in their basement, but then they advance and they study more and more chemistry or physics or whatever it is, computer science, and they learn higher level concepts where you can, with the high level concepts, you can take giant steps instead of baby steps, and you can cover many things all with uniform rules, and that is so compelling. Then they say, oh, hey, these abstract concepts are wonderful. I'm not going to let my students waste their time on the low-level ones. just teach them the high level stuff, and you know they do giant steps all their life. They don't need baby steps. And I think that always flops. You build a house from the bottom up, and you got to have the brains need something to understand what things are resting on as we're putting superstructures on top of them. Now, so I think it's very important to have some kind of good notion as to what really costs money when you're running a computer program. I think if somebody studied computer science only with high-level concepts, they come up with a very distorted view of what is the way to actually compute something. And I've known people who learned only APL as their programming language, and the things they come up with are really elegant one-line solutions to problems. You know, you have something and you expand it into a 10-dimensional array, and then you compress that down. And I would never think of that solution because I know what it means to have a 10-dimensional array. You have to compress it down. So I think it's important to understand low-level concepts and high-level concepts, and go between them. Not everybody can do that well, but the ones who can are the ones that I focus on, because there's a need for such people in the world. So I spent a long time on the MMIX processor, which is a RISC processor that's very close to the machines that we have nowadays. And incidentally, I just I wrote simulator for the MMIX process. It's an architecture that has zillion possible parameters that to fix, so that you can imagine that you've got any number of functional units, all kinds of caches, all kinds of cache replacement strategies, all kinds of multiple issue. The parts of your instruction set can be emulated or not. You have, in other words, you start out and with this one simulator, you start out with a configuration file saying what does the pipeline of your division instruction look like, maybe we can't build these machines, but you specify a particular version of the MMIX architecture, and then you can see how much it actually saves if you could build it. That particular simulator was the hardest computer program I ever wrote in my life. It took me 2 years, and I'm convinced that I would never have finished it if I didn't have literate programming. The task would have been just humanly impossible without the methodology of literate programming. It wasn't just a nice thing to have, but literate programming was crucial for that program. Now that program is published in a book that's part of Springer Lecture Notes on Computer Science series, and I just heard from them late last week that the new edition, which I worked hard on to replace, is now online. So it's Lecture Notes on Computer Science number 1750, and it includes all the bugs I paid for fixing in the original design, so I personally believe that one of the best ways to learn writing good software is to have a clean machine that you can play with at the low level. Now this idea has not been extremely popular in America, but it's gone like hotcakes in Germany and Japan, and there's active new books coming out. Another thing on my desk to read, proofread, is a update of the art of computer programming that replaces mix by MMIX, It looks good, but I have to check it out this month. Been done by a very good professor from Munich. So that's low level. Now high level, uh, I love high level as well. But the main thing is effortlessly seeing things in the large and in the small are almost the same time. You have a problem to solve at the high level, but you know that in order to do that, what you want to do is add one to a register. And that's going to advance.
Very good. So I think we have a couple of questions online, and now we will be back here.
Right, so about low level, could you comment on carry-free addition, the idea of adding in constant time?
Well, yeah, except that I'm not a specialist in this, but I'm told by Nick Pickbinger, who is, that it is possible to add in constant time, but you don't use the Verilog for it because the electrons know how to do it, but the chips they have to be designed so that it's true. And I do have a reference to this fact in volume 4A, paper by a guy in New Zealand that developed it. But it's known to be possible to build machines that where the carry is unit time because speed of light. But the hardware could be built. So this raises a very interesting thing. I think we have these big memory chips that are marvels of and there's a huge number of flip flops in our little pen drives. But only log they have n bits of information, but only log n are flipping or flopping. There's a huge potential for more parallelism going on in devices that have storage devices. So could we design hardware of a new kind that includes the ability to say add two numbers from different parts of this memory together without sort of in unit time. And that hardware could be built. And the tricky part is really the shifting, the barrel shifting. You really want to only allow word sizes that are powers of 2, for example, instead of an arbitrary thing. You want to say add 138 bits to 3082 bits, but in fact make it possible for parts of your memory to do that. Okay, so now in volume 4A. I have a section called Bitwise Tricks, Bitwise Tricks and Techniques, where I gathered together all the things I've learned over the years about great ways to use exclusive OR instruction and things like that in your that's present in the hardware, and get extra efficiency from using not just plus minus time divide, but also have Boolean operations that are operating bitwise. Including shifts, and there it turned out you can do lots and lots of things that I wouldn't have believed possible until I had learned them one at a time over the years, and I present those methods in that section, and then I have what I call broad word computing, which is a possible vision for how somebody could build larger devices that would exploit this the ability, and a lot of it is based actually on carrying, because if you want to do a lot of things at once, you can still separate things into fields by ORing in bits that will affect carrying between parts of the memory. So you can do matrix multiplication in logarithmic time, things like this, because of the with these simple primitive operations, and it would conceivably be possible to have new kinds of parallelism that would would certainly work a lot better than quantum computing, seems to me. And I gave a lecture about this, I don't know, 10 years ago or somewhere on my website. It's one of the musings that I gave at Stanford, and I'm not sure at the time. I decided later to call it broadword computing, but I had another name for it at the time I gave the lecture. It wasn't as good a name, and I've totally forgotten it by now. Basically, the idea is, what can you do with if you're allowed to do unit time addition, XOR, and restricted kind of shifts where you're restricted to powers of 2. And an amazing number of things can be done efficiently with that. It's a generalization of what they call SIMD architecture.
I think Steve had a question. I feel like it's an interesting one.
Curious, someone who knows the power and the limitations. What are your thoughts about? Do you think there's any fundamental barrier to artificial intelligence?
That singularity is next door.
That's right. That's right. But do you think it's just a question of degree, or there's some fundamental limits you're going to run into?
Yeah. Okay, I see no reason why anybody should be able to claim knowledge about that. And so it could go. I mean, there's one hypothesis that all we need is to get over a certain threshold, and suddenly something was going to gel. I don't see any signs of being close to that myself. I view things as becoming more and more a mixture where we'll have more kinds of hardware grafted into our bodies, and not going to be no boundary between the two. More bionic man no longer. But I also there's parts of me that say, well, wait a minute, are emotions only chemical? No, or is there something? And I have spiritual experiences that seem real to me, but maybe they only seem real. So I'll never know. But I decided maybe I don't have to know that I enjoy having a life where there are some things I can surround and sort of know for sure, like mathematical theorems, and there are other things that are mysteries, and I don't know. And actually, I think I would be unhappy if I didn't have both mysteries and certainty in my life. So I'm not too enthusiastic about removing the mysteries. Short answer. You had a question.
So, my question was, what is the problem? If it's not, why haven't we?
Okay, well, I have a kind of extended answer to that. I put online in April. If you search for my name and then 20 questions, that'll be one of the questions. But the bottom line is that I'm in the minority still, but I tend to think that probably P equals NP, but that doesn't mean that we'll be able to do anything about it. So P is the set of problems that have polynomial time solutions, and NP is the set of problems that can be done non-deterministically or polynomial time to verify. But the question, if they're equal or unequal, just talks about existence of an algorithm. So let's take the poster child of NP complete problems is satisfiability. Suppose that that we can solve satisfiability or any of these others in polynomial time. That means there exists an algorithm to do it. It doesn't tell us that we'll ever know such an algorithm. It only says that there's one out there. We can't prove that there isn't one. So there's an incredible number of algorithms possible and it's really hard to believe that none of them are going to work. That they just might happen to work, and infinitely many of them work. But I do know of cases where we have proved that there exists a linear time algorithm to solve a problem in graph theory. But we have no idea what the algorithm is. We know that the algorithm is going to have a certain form. It's going to say, test whether the graph includes a finite list of bad graphs. If none of the bad graphs is in this graph, then it belongs to the class we're looking for. The answer is yes. And the theorem of Robertson-Seymour says that every minor closed family of graphs can be tested in linear, not linear time, polynomial time. Because there are only finitely many graphs that have to be ruled out as minors. So if you want to know, a simple minor closed family is a planar graph, and a graph is planar if and only if it doesn't contain a K5, 5 points that are all a clique of 5 lines, or it doesn't contain the K33, which is the 3 utilities connected to 3 houses. As a minor. A minor is a graph that you get by collapsing edges and throwing away vertices. And so any minor closed family of graphs, and there's as many of those as there are possible graphs, because those could be your minor that you want to forbid. If somebody gives you an infinite number of things to forbid, you can always remove from that and reduce it down to a finite number of minors. And there are lots of minor closed families that are of practical interest. All we know is that there's some finite group of excluded minors. So we don't know the algorithm, but we know it exists. And so there's a big difference between knowledge of something and that the thing is there at all. It's just like in cryptography, you have the information is there, but you can't find it because it's hard to compute it. So I personally believe that probably someone will show someday that there's only finitely many reasons why something can't be polynomial. Therefore, there is a polynomial algorithm. But maybe it might be that they'll say, and the degree of the polynomial is less than 10 to the 10 to the 10 to the 10. That'll be, but maybe you'll say, I can't even tell you an upper bound on the degree. I just know it's polynomial. In the Robertson-Seymour case, they have no upper bound. They don't, you can't say, after I've tested so many finite number of graphs, then I'm done. All you know is it's finite. So you're stuck. So this means you need a new, this means that just having another, having a polynomial algorithm is going to make no difference at all to our daily life in any way, except that we won't spend any time trying to prove that it doesn't exist. Now people, but people said, well, a lot of people argue that P can't be equal to NP because look, if it was there, we would have found it by now. All these smart people wouldn't. And I say the same thing. P must be equal to NP because if it wasn't there, all these smart people have been trying to prove it, and they've failed. So we're even on that kind of argument.
Very good. I think we can have one more question from online.
Oh wait, my friend is in the back. Let her ask.
Okay.
what advice would I give a computer science student to improve their mind?
Yeah. Other
Oh,
than
you
work
can,
hard
can you
and
improve your
read a
mind? Maybe
lot.
you can. Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, the short answer is don't follow every trend just because it's trendy. You have to believe in it yourself.
Hakan? Maybe we can close it.
Yeah. Okay, here is a political one. I read somewhere that you're opposed to software patents. Why is that?
Oh, well, I'm opposed to trivial software patents. I don't mind if somebody has a really great idea and then is able to uh, get some compensation for that instead of having it stolen from them. But what I don't like when when somebody patents something that I would assign to a random student, and I expect that I would give them a B if they didn't get the answer. And there's an awful lot of patents like that out there. And I wouldn't have been able to write tech if I had to operate in today's environment.
Okay. One question, and we can.
Can a computer be programmed in a way so that it classify computer programming itself?
Um, should I say yes or no? I'd say no, but then I could also say I how would I know if it had done this? Is the question, is the main thing. I guess Turing tried to analyze that question. Hey, I was expecting somebody to ask the following question, which is a clever question that I was asked twice before when I did this, and that is to say, John, what question didn't we ask that you wish we had asked?
Oh yeah, that's
And you know, and the guy, you know, so anyway, and the and I and so I said, well, ask me something about music.
Oh, you have a pipe organ in your house.
So okay, so anyway, I'm just teasing, of course, but I do but I do love music, and it used to go along with computer science pretty much hand in hand. Students in the 70s, the first question we asked them was, "What's your instrument?" But that changed somehow in the 80s. I'm not sure why, but anyway, it's certainly one of the great loves for me is music, and so I'm spending my spare time these days it exists trying to write some music for organ, and I'm hoping that that it's not going to be a disaster. But I'm not worried about. I mean, I'm entitled to make you know, do bad stuff if I. But for ever since the '60s, if not earlier, there's been some voice inside me saying, "Don write some music," and I realized last year that I'm 75 years old. If I'm ever going to do it, I should start now. And so there's this muse has been trying to talk to me, and every once in a while, then some ideas come to me, and I jot it down. And last year I visited Austria, and Vienna, and I went to the main music store, and I bought myself a beautiful book full of blank staff paper. And I figured that wouldn't hurt if I wrote in the same kind of book that Beethoven and Brahms and Schubert did. That would be okay. So whenever I get a good idea, I put it in this book now. And so my hope is that I'm writing a major piece for organ. It's going to probably take about an hour to play, and it might seem like 3 hours to listen to, but my hope is that that I can hear it myself on my 80th birthday. And so
We look forward to that. I think we have to close the session now. I mean the lecture. Thank you very much again. We really appreciate it. We are
thank you
honored
for all the
you.
questions.
Thank you so much, Pittsburgh and online audience.
Yeah.